Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome you all to the CPP Education Team's Ask an Expert webinar, Exploring Careers Using the Strong and MBTI Assessment. We have more than 650 people registered today, which is very exciting. My name is Karen Gonzalez, and I'm the Associate Marketing Manager here at CPP. I'll be moderating today's webinar, and we'll be introducing our featured speaker, Judy Gruder, in just a moment. But before I do, I'd like to do a quick walkthrough of the webinar format for those of you who may be joining us for the first time. Today's webinar will run for approximately 90 minutes. During the presentation, if you have questions, you're welcome to submit them to me using the question function in the webinar controls, or simply send me a chat message. Judy will be pausing throughout the webinar today to answer your questions, and I'll give everyone a chance to pose their questions during these breaks. Two representatives from the CPP Education Team are also in attendance. We have Jim Larkin and Jack Powers, and they will be available to answer questions as well at the end of the webinar. Judy will be introducing them a little later on. As with all our webinars, today's webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending out the link to the recording in just a few days. Now that I walked you through all the logistics, I'd like to introduce our experts. I'm very excited to welcome as CPP's Ask an Expert, Judy Gruder, GS Principal and Trainer. Judy has been a career development program consultant and trainer for more than 35 years, as well as a National Certified Counselor and NCDA Master Career Counselor. She's a recognized authority on the uses of assessments in career counseling and is the co-author of a number of publications and reports on the Strong Interest Inventory, such as the new iStartStrong report and Myers-Briggs tools. Judy is also the author of the GS MBTI Certification Program for Career Counselors and Educators, and co-author of the GS Strong Interest Inventory Certification Program. Please join me in welcoming Judy, and now I'd like to turn over the webinar to her. Welcome, Judy.
Hi, Karen. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Many of you may have been with us last month when we looked at some advanced interpretation strategies for the Strong and MBTI assessments. And today we're going to backtrack a little and look at basic career exploration, strategies that apply to almost any career exploration setting. Career exploration almost always involves an assessment of the individual, an assessment of career options, looking at possibilities and trying them out, and then deciding next steps. And we're going to be looking at the Strong and MBTI separately as we go through these steps and see how they work. Whenever and wherever clients and students are exploring careers, they're searching for answers to four basic questions, what I call the 4 W's. And many of you have seen the 4 W's before, either in the CPP publications that I've written or in previous webinars. My own professional bias is that the questions have to be taken in order. Students have to know who they are and why work is important in their lives before they can consider what they want to do and where. The challenge is that when they come to us, they're asking what and where questions. We know that they can't really answer those questions until they've looked internally a little bit as well. The MBTI and Strong assessments each address these puzzle pieces, but each one does it differently. The MBTI looks internally. It picks up natural preferences, preferences that are as natural to us as handedness or eye dominance. We can predict what clients would enjoy doing from their natural inclinations. Its interpretation is based on the theoretical model of Carl Jung. Indexes of clarity indicate how certain respondents are of their preferences and how sure we as practitioners can be that the assessment got it right. Occupational suggestions from the MBTI come from self-selection ratios, what we call SSRs, or indexes of attraction. If a certain type is attracted to a career field or occupation much more frequently than would be expected from its percentage in the general population, we infer that there's something about that career field or occupation that is naturally attracted to the type. The Strong is different. The Strong looks externally. It reflects what we know about what we enjoy doing. Holland's theoretical framework is the glue that ties the parts of the inventory together, but the scales are normative and empirical and generate standard scores that compare you with people in general and workers in the representative occupations. We'll look at how the MBTI assessment looks at the who, why, what, where pieces first, and then we'll look at the Strong. MBTI type codes are made up of one letter from each of these pairs of preferences. The letter that represents our natural preference for extroversion versus introversion, how we get our energy and how we direct it. Sensing versus intuition, which is how we take in information. Thinking versus feeling, how we make decisions. And judging versus perceiving, our general approach to life. The MBTI Form M reports generate a profile that looks like this. The numbers on computer-scored MBTI profiles are PCI's, Preference Clarity Indexes. They're not scores. They do not reflect amounts of preferences. They simply indicate how frequently respondents answer in one direction versus the other. Higher PCIs are more reliable. Lower PCIs, especially in the 1 to 5 range, often take more discussion, more reflection, more exploration to verify. This profile that you're looking at is the MBTI College Profile for Sandy. Sandy's a college sophomore who's exploring majors and careers. She's considering business, particularly HR and sales, and social work. Keep these possible majors in mind as we look at her assessment results. I particularly chose Sandy because her type is ESFP, and there's some interesting things about ESP types in college and in higher education that I'm going to mention briefly when we get to that part of the webinar. Remember that Sandy's ESFP. Now, taken together, the middle two letters of each type define who we are and why work is important, how we want to express ourselves through our work. For instance, ST types are practical and they're matter of fact. Their interests and values are driven by a need to get it right. No matter what career field they're in, it's getting it right that they're all about. SF types are sympathetic and friendly, and their interests and values are driven by a need to provide service, especially practical service to others. NF types are enthusiastic and insightful. Their interests and values are driven by a need to empower. NT types are logical and ingenious. Their interests and values are driven by a need to understand. Sandy's ESFP type suggests that she's motivated by providing service to others. If we can verify the middle two letters, we can suggest typical college majors that might be a good fit. Social work and sales show up in the SF column for Sandy, but the sensing function overlaps with business majors as well. Career fields are related to majors, where once again Sandy's SF connects with social work and sales. The MBTI College Profile also gives us some good information about who Sandy is and why work is important to her type. If you're new to type, the 16 possible combinations of types, the type codes, are arranged in the table that is depicted here. This is the MBTI type table. Notice that all of the types in each column have the same two middle letters. Sandy is in the SF column, the 4 types that are most attracted to providing practical service to others. Now, looking next at the where question, we've talked about who Sandy is and why she wants to work, what might be her primary motivations. Now we're going to look at work environments. Those who prefer extroversion are attracted to work environments where there's a lot of variety and action and interaction with others, where workers develop their ideas through discussion, and where they can learn new tasks by talking and doing and see how others do their work. Introversion is the opposite. Those who prefer introversion are attracted to work environments where there's quiet for concentration and they can focus on a project or task, where they can learn new tasks by reading and reflecting and develop ideas internally. They enjoy working alone. They prefer to work alone without interruptions. Now looking at the where question through JP, those who prefer judging are attracted to work environments where they can plan their work and follow the plan, and projects are completed. Things are structured and scheduled, and decisions are made quickly. The focus is on timely completion and outcomes. Those who prefer perceiving are attracted to work environments where they can have flexibility in how they do their work and be spontaneous in how they do tasks, where things are not structured and scheduled and decisions are left open as long as possible. The focus here is on the process rather than on outcomes. Any J type will tell you how frustrating it is to work in a P environment. Just as I'm thinking about it, my own J trembles when I think back on my years in academia where decisions were revisited annually, year after year after year. In committee meetings, we'd be discussing the same thing. We'd think it was all done. My J would have closure, and then by golly, a couple of months later, it was all opened up again. And any P type will tell you how frustrating it is to work in a J environment where they're constantly accountable for outcomes and have to produce timelines and evidence that things have been completed. This is a very uncomfortable mismatch when it happens. You can find the information on the slides we just looked at in all of the major MBTI publications. I've used the wording from Introduction to Type. It's more closely related to the MBTI manual itself, and my own NT type really likes that. Or you can rely on the MBTI Career Report to personalize the information for respondents. If your student verifies a different type during the interpretation process and you've scored a career report for the reported type, you can rescore the career report for the verified type and actually use two reports to help narrow things down, compare, and verify the final type. Now to personalize the what-where information for Sandy's ESFP types, I'm going to show some clips from her career report that look at the what-where pieces. We saw her actual profile earlier, and she verified ESFP as her type. Preferred work tasks that ESFP likes are listed here, and preferred work environments. The career report also offers some helpful job search and interviewing tips. Again, these are personalized to type. I think the challenges are important, especially if you're working individually on job search skills with students and clients. These are the things that get in their way sometimes of following through on job search tasks. Now, the career report addressing the what question also highlights respondents' strengths and strategies for development. These can be helpful when they're talking about majors at the beginning of their college career to kind of be in touch with challenges that they might run up against when they're in college. Also helpful, of course, as they're going into the workforce to be able to present their strengths, state them clearly, and use their natural strengths whenever possible. Also addressing the what question, the MBTI Career Report rank orders the 22 ONET job families for each type. The top job family for the type is always scored at 100, and then they go down from there. This information is based on a very large CPP sample that was collected in the early part of this decade, and it covers all 22 ONET job families except for management. Management is kind of interspersed throughout the other 22. Here are the job families that are the least attractive to ESFP types. So you've actually looked at the most attractive job families, the moderately attractive and the least attractive, and the most moderate and least come from how frequently the type is represented in the career fields. Again, the self-selection, the notion of self-selection. For a complete list of all occupations in each job family, you can go to onetcenter.org, click on Find Occupations, and then from the drop-down menu, if you select Job Family, the whole job family will come up. Here is the ONET link to Sandy's top job family, which is healthcare support. Now the career report summarizes overall career trends for each type. Notice for Sandy that healthcare and sales are both included here. The healthcare is interesting. Her parents are in healthcare, and she's been interested in it all her life. It's what she's been exposed to, and it shows up, you'll see, on the strong as well. Now the career report also rank orders 282 specific occupational titles. These are taken from the same sample that the job families are taken from. Remember, these are SSRs. These are occupations where the type is highly represented. These are the top 24 occupations for ESFP. One of the reasons I wanted to pick an ESFP type for this webinar is that you can see from this report that there are very few professional level occupations that are listed in the top 24. None of these occupations really require a college degree, and this can be challenging if you're sitting with an ESFP type or an ESTP type. You're on a college campus, you have them in a group, and you've given them their career reports back, and none of their occupations require college. Particularly challenging if their parents are spending $100,000 a year to get them there. And this is because ESFP types have a very low graduation rate from four-year colleges and universities, and so they're not often found in professional occupations. When you're using the career report for SP college students, you want to focus on the SF and ST hearts, the hearts of type, the middle two letters, and on the threads that are apparent in the occupational lists, rather than on the titles themselves. Notice the threads here of practical helping and hands-on work. If you want specific information, expanded information on the top job titles for any type that you're using the career report with, again, you can go directly to ONET, where you'll find full descriptions. I'm actually going to demonstrate this when we get to the strong, which is hyperlinked directly to ONET, so you can see how this works. This is just a screenshot to show you that it can be done. I'm going to show you the least popular occupations for ESFP types as well. Notice that these are more likely to be at the professional level. These are the occupations where you're least likely to find ESFP types. Again, it's related to the issue of persistence of ESFP and ESTP types in higher education. I think type and retention is a whole other webinar, I think. In fact, a few years ago we did some workshops with CPP on type and retention and discussed this issue for a whole day about how to motivate ESP types to stay in college, different learning styles, different teaching styles, what it is that attracts them to persist through the four-year level. Another word of caution about the occupations that are listed in the career reports for each type shows up in this table. This is a type table for a sample of career counselors, a pretty large table. And remember that this information is based on self-selection ratios. It's how frequently do the different types show up in an occupation. Notice in this type table that ENFP is the most frequently occurring type in this sample. I have it marked in green. And notice that ENFJ has the highest self-selection ratio. I've actually got the SSR there, 3.69. Any self-selection ratio that's higher than 1 is significant. There's something about that occupation that's particularly attractive to that type. And the ratio is actually more statistically predictive than the modal type. We could do an entire webinar just on MBTI statistics, but I don't think we've had a lot of requests for that. My NT would have fun with it, though, I can tell you. What I want to emphasize here is that every type is represented in the sample, including Sandy's ESFP type. We see this in every occupational sample. And this underscores the notion that any type can do any job, we'll just do it differently. So if Sandy were to actually decide to explore the field of career counseling for her own career, she'd want to pay particular attention to the work tasks and work environment descriptors that are appealing to ESFP types. I can share with you that I've had several ESFP participants in our online MBTI certification program where I get to know participants pretty well. And one of the online assignments in that program is to describe how they see themselves using their type functions and how they approach their work. And most of them are career counselors. ESFP career counselors describe their work entirely differently from ENFP and ENFJ career counselors, but they're doing the same job title. Now, Sandy's mother is a surgical nurse in an orthopedic hospital near an Olympic ski area, and Sandy mentions two possible career interests at this point. Possibly HR, she mentioned that before, but for a hospital or a medical setting, or representing or selling medical equipment to doctors and hospitals. We're going to be pausing after the next couple of slides, so if any questions are popping up in your mind, text them to Karen or click on the question and she'll pass the questions on to me and we'll talk about them a little bit before we look at the strong. There's an MBTI interpretive report for college students as well. The interpretive reports expand on the basic profile. There's an interpretive report specifically for college students that's a little bit different from the standard interpretive report that you may have seen in other settings. This is ESFP again, addressing the who question. Who am I? Who is Sandy? The report adds key descriptors and characteristics for the type. And this expands on the answer to the who am I question beyond just specific keywords. So you have the keywords at the top of the interpretive report page, followed by narratives that go a little bit deeper. Now, the other thing about the interpretive report is that this report goes a little deeper than the profiles and the career report by introducing the concept of type dynamics, but in a simplified language for students. The type dynamics at the bottom are the four cognitive functions, the four mental processes, in the order that this type prefers. Sensing, number one, followed by feeling, then thinking, then intuition. We're going to switch gears in a few minutes and go into the strong and revisit these same four who, why, what, where questions, but using the strong to answer the questions. Karen, has anything come in that we might want to talk about as a group before I go on?
Yeah, I have a few questions that have trickled in. Let's see here. One of them is Donna's saying she missed how to find job families and popular occupations if the student self-scores differently from online results. So I think she was just wanting to find where that was.
Okay. If you're using the career report, you would administer the MBTI. Student client would come up with reported type. You would then take them through the type verification process. They would verify a different type. You would then go back into Skills 1 and enter the verified type and rescore the report. And they'll get a second career report for the verified type. It just won't have the profile on it, but it will have all of the other information. Does that sound like the question?
I think so, yeah. Let's see. If I hear back from her, I will respond again.
Okay.
So, another one is, let's see here, we have a question from Jeanette, and she's asking, what do you do when a student's MBTI or strong assessment does not closely match with their career aspirations?
Oh boy, that's a great question. Actually, we're doing a webinar next month on challenging interpretation issues, and that could be one that we could talk about. I'm going to respond to this from my own professional style and what I do. My role as a career counselor is to provide information and then to guide the student through the process of evaluating that information against what they're thinking about for their careers. And if I've got a type sitting in front of me, and I'm going to use INFP as an example because it just happened this week. If I have an INFP, a verified INFP, who is telling me that they want to go into, that they want to do an MBA program, that they're going into a corporate environment, what I'm going to say is that it's not typical for INFPs to work in corporate environments. When they do, they're usually adjusting and working out of less natural preferences, and it can be tiring. I want them to have the information that they're going to be a unique type in that environment, and so part of their whole career exploration and career adjustment process is going to be learning to adapt and learning to function and having enough balance in their lives so that they can be more authentic about who they are outside of work. And the key is if you're going to compromise and go into a field that isn't a good fit, you want it to be at least an area where it isn't so draining that you don't have anything left over for the other parts of your life where you're living out who you truly are. But I put it on the table. I know I'm very clear and say that the results that we've got in front of us suggest that it's not a good fit. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what might be a better fit. If you still decide that INFP you want to go into a corporate environment, we'll talk about how to make that happen and how to be successful at it. There's a place for everyone in every field, but you have to be very self-motivated to find that niche that fits if who you are doesn't fit what you think you're aspiring to. Long answer, difficult question.
Thanks, Judy. Here's another one from Anna. She states, is it fair to say that any type can do any job? However, when people work on tasks and environments opposite to their type, they are more likely to experience stress, unhappiness, etc.?
Yes. Short answer, yes. Yes. I mean, that's the point of using type. But at the same time, we can coach people to use their less natural preferences so that they're not quite as stress-producing. That's part of what type dynamics is all about, and learning about the role of the tertiary function, for instance, the third most preferred function in a type. Because that's the part of the type that if you're working under a lot of stress, you can slip into your tertiary, which really balances using your inferior function too much. And that's a type dynamics webinar. We've done them before, and it's the bottom line is, yeah, the better the fit, the less the stress.
Great. Another question from John. He's asking, can we make the point to clients that the 22 job families and the MBTI Career Report may also represent related, quote, cousin careers, work environments, and levels, parentheses, entries through leadership for further exploration?
Yeah, I think so, and ONET does a good job of that because it has so many related families and occupational titles listed whenever you click into any section of ONET. What ONET does is it takes all of the job titles, the core job titles in the U.S. economy, and groups them into 23 families, 22 of which are represented specifically in the report. So if one job family comes up of interest, you can move around within that job family and look at all kinds of levels and entry points for the family. And then when we look at the RIASEC hexagon, which we're going to do with the strong, you can see that job families next to each other on the hexagon overlap. And so there's movement between job families as well.
Great. Let's see, another one from Susie, actually. Is there a way of getting unique preference patterns separately from buying a specific report?
It sounds like you might be looking for another assessment of type. It's unique preference patterns come from the MBTI. There are a lot of other assessments out there that say that they're getting at type. I've got to respond from my NT, which is we're dealing with people's lives here, and accuracy is key, and psychology isn't accurate to begin with. So what we want to do, if we possibly can, is use the best information we can access when we're working with students and clients. And the MBTI computer-scored reports give us the most accurate information. Accurate means it's reliable. If the respondent takes the assessment more than once, they're going to come up with the same type again. And that's what sets the computer-scored MBTI apart from all other MBTI assessment, all other type assessments. Now, the self-scoring and hand-scoring come close, but the computer score gives it that one more tweak that comes from the construction that makes it more reliable and valid. I have a colleague who says he doesn't need to use any instrument. He can ask 4 questions and get somebody's type. And my response to that is if someone is clear about their type, I can ask them 4 questions and get their type too. I can have a cup of coffee with them and get their type. The challenge is that most people who come to us for career development work aren't clear. If they were absolutely clear and everything was black and white, then they wouldn't even be asking the questions. So I leave it in your hands.
Okay.
Probably quick, Karen. Maybe I'm looking at time here.
Yeah.
A couple more questions we've got time for, and then we better hit the strong.
Okay, sure. Let's see here. Let me pick up a couple here. Here's one from Jill. She's asking, is there a way to designate that only careers that require college degrees show up? She says she thinks this can be done with the strong.
I hope the marketing team heard that one. No, there isn't a way to do that at the moment. The strong, of course, emphasizes more professional careers, but I'm not aware that there's a report for the strong that just lists professional careers. There was, with the old strong, we had a report that did that, but it was, I believe that it was pulled because it's not the level of education, it's the personality that's showing up that we want to focus on. And I remember, I hope this isn't too much of a tangent, but I'm one of those people that has used the strong so long that I remember when bus driver was on it. And bus driver would come up on a student who's at a private university. Parents are paying $80,000 a year, and bus driver comes up as their #1 job title. And of course, college career counselors were uncomfortable with that. It was difficult to handle. It didn't make me happy either. But then when I would talk to the student and see the R in their personality, I could see why bus driver came up. And so we could talk about that. We weren't saying to the student, go be a bus driver. We were saying there's something about this occupation that's very similar to who you are. Let's see if we can find out what that is and generate it to a professional level. That's the way we use job titles that aren't professional. If I'm wrong, Jim and Jack are on and listening to this, and if I'm wrong, I'm hoping they'll pick up at the end and say, there's a report I don't know about.
Great. Thank you. And then, okay, so it's the last one here from Bruce. He's asking, since many fields and occupations are changing with increasing rapidity, has this changed how you use the MBTI and strong inventory with clients, both young adults and career transitioners?
Now, I've been in this field so long. I've actually been doing career counseling since 1964, which is kind of scary. And so I've seen cycle after cycle after cycle of changes in the workforce, and what makes the strong so powerful is that it's renormed all the time to reflect changing occupations. In terms of how I use it with the economy the way it is right now, I'm doing a lot more work with clients, and I don't work with college students anymore. I'm working mostly with adults. But I'm doing a lot more work with them around learning how to use their less preferred functions. How to get in the door, maybe through the backside of their type, in order to generate an opportunity to use their natural preferences. There's a lot more work around type dynamics now than there used to be, where we were just matching people with job titles. Is that okay? Should we go on with the strong and then hold the rest of the questions and pick them up at the end if we need to?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, so we're going to look, the strong is really quite different. We're going to approach the same 4 questions, but the strong looks externally. It profiles patterns of what we know about and what we like doing. And later this year we're going to do a webinar again where we combine the strong and the MBTI, and you'll see that it's quite different. The MBTI is who we were meant to be, who we were born to be. It's our natural preference. The strong is what we know about, is what we've been exposed to. And the interpretation of the strong is based on a comparison with people in general and satisfied workers in various occupations. Now, there's a RIASEC overlay to the strong scales. This is a theory that's been overlaid on the empirical scales. The strong was not developed to portray the RIASEC theory. like the MBTI was developed specifically to give us everyday access to Jung. The Strong doesn't work that way. With the Strong, the scales came first, and then the theory was laid over them. It's kind of the glue that holds all the scales together. And this is John Holland's theory of personality types and work environments. And there's 6 categories. They're depicted here around a hexagon. The categories next to each other have the most overlap with each other. And on the Strong, these are called the general occupational themes, or the GOTS. And what's key to this theory is that work environments are formed by the people in them, not by the tasks that are done. For instance, social helpers usually like doing caring and supportive tasks. And even when they're working in conventional work environments, doing practical and efficient tasks, they create a social, helping environment around them. So keep that in mind, that people create work environments, not jobs. Now, the most complete Strong package for college students is the Strong Profile plus the College Profile plus the Interpretive Report. The College Profile adds some additional pages to the numbers on the Strong Profile. Then the Interpretive Report gives you a very thorough narrative. And we're going to look at the same who, why, what, where questions, first using this package. Then we're going to simplify it looking at the new iStartStrong report for a few minutes. Now, the 6 themes, the 6 theme scales compare Sandy. We're still working with Sandy, remember ESFP. The 6 theme scales compare Sandy's answers to the Strong with the answers of people in general. The numbers on the Strong are standard scores, so they actually measure amounts of interest, unlike the PCIs on the MBTI. Her theme score suggests that compared to women in general, she has a very high interest in persuading and influencing, a high interest in helping others, and organizing information. She pretty much agreed with enterprising and social, very much with enterprising, somewhat with conventional. Remember, she was an ESFP, and that's understandable because sensing overlaps with conventional, but P doesn't. The general theme descriptions on the profile give us some clues to how she sees herself and what motivates her, her values, and what she enjoys doing. So we're addressing, just on the profile, the who, why, what questions from the Strong. And then descriptions from the interpretive report specifically address the who am I question with personal descriptors. Now the college profile goes deeper into the what question with potential college majors related to each theme. The college profile is most helpful. In fact, this is my recommendation. Jack and Jim and I probably should have talked about this, but my recommendation is the college profile is most useful for high school seniors who are thinking about what they're going to major in college and what types of colleges to go to, and college students who are exploring majors. So that's usually freshmen and sophomores. Once college students have decided on a major, particularly like 2 weeks before they graduate, you want to use just the standard profile. You don't want to give them a report that lists a whole bunch of majors that they haven't chosen and now they're graduating. Now the Strong interpretive report really digs into the why question. What motivates people who have their combination of theme codes? Sandy is exploring whether enterprising is her primary motivator or social. And in the interpretive report, the top 2 themes are presented as motivators in both orders so that she can see whether it's persuading and influencing or helping others that drives her. Now the basic interest scales on the Strong, we call them the BIZs, represent interests that are more specific than the general themes. They answer the what question. They provide very specific information that we can use to help Sandy explore various career fields. What would she most enjoy doing? Now, like any interest, the BIZs, the basic interest scales, don't necessarily separate career from leisure. And that's where the practitioner comes in. That's something that we'll want to explore with her. Now notice that like the MBTI, HR is showing up again, and sales. So we have some overlap in her reports, but we could use either one, or we could use them together to reinforce. The college profile for the strong suggests all kinds of what answers. What kinds of college activities she would enjoy, what kind of internship settings, college courses, all directly related to the top business. And I've just taken her top 2 to show you here. If you're using the interpretive report too, it also includes typical interests and activities for the top basic interest scales. These are like the work tasks that you saw on the MBTI report. What's really interesting about the strong is that it also has occupational scales, and we can look at the occupational scales in 2 different ways. First is to answer the what question and suggest specific occupations by comparing Sandy's responses to the strong with workers in 122 occupations. Sandy is most similar to workers in these 10 occupations, but she also has similarity to several others. And you can see that similarity to some professional occupations is coming through here a little bit more than the ESFP on the SSR-based MBTI report. Now, still looking at the 10 top occupational scales, the Strong College Profile provides specific information about the educational preparation, college courses, related careers for each of Sandy's top 10. Now, the interpretive report calls on ONET, and it details typical work tasks and selected KSAs, knowledges, skills, and abilities. These come directly from ONET. And just like the MBTI, if you don't have the interpretive report in front of you, you can do a quick search on ONET for any occupation on the strong and find related job titles. So what I did here was give you a screenshot of going to Human Resources Manager, and you've got a whole list of occupations that are related to Human Resources Manager, but not exactly the same title. If you're not using the interpretive report, you can find the tasks and the KSAs on the ONET site. Again, same thing we did with the MBTI. And some students really like the process of taking the job titles from the Strong or the MBTI, going online and doing the research themselves. Others would rather have the interpretive report that provides all of that information for them. This is from ONET too. You can even find specific employment information about the occupations on the Strong by state. Some people don't know that, but you can dig deeper. And many state links even have videos where you can go and watch a person doing the job and talking about their work. Notice down here you have national and state wages compared. I'm going to show this a little bit more when we look at iStartStrong. This is how you use, what we've been looking at is how you use the occupational scales on the Strong to come up with specific occupations to research. You want to remember, though, that those 122 occupations are representative. They're there to serve as a gateway to ONET and to other resources that open up the entire job market for exploration. They're not in any way meant to be limiting. We also tend to use the occupational scales a different way to address the where question. Keep in mind that high scores on the occupational scales come from a similarity with workers. So if an occupation comes up in your top 10, it's because you answered the Strong the way people in the occupation answered the Strong. Now we can make kind of a leap and say, okay, if I have all this similarity with people with certain codes, I'm going to like working in the same environment that they like working in. So rather than going with job titles now, we're looking at where Sandy might want to work, what kind of an environment. And this is there's an arithmetic formula. Is that the word? An arithmetic formula that generates a composite of all the occupational scales, and it generates something called an occupational scales theme code. And by the way, this is all outlined how to do it in the user's guide for the Strong. And This, this system for generating a composite code describes potentially satisfying work environments. And in Sandy's case, you can see, even if you don't know how to do this process, look at this really high score for enterprising down here, which I just completely, sorry, I'm going to go back and pick it up. I just messed it up. This high score of 31 suggests that she has a lot more similarity with people who have enterprising in their work than she does with any other code. But the codes that are still coming up more often when we're looking at occupations are enterprising, social, and conventional, the same 3 codes that came up in her theme code. But when I see something like this from the OSSes, I know that she wants to be in an enterprising business environment. She's going to be very uncomfortable in a social work environment, for instance, if enterprising is where her similarity is. And if you don't like doing arithmetic, because this is a little bit of a chart that you kind of have to figure out, you can eyeball it just by looking at occupational scales. And you can look at all this color. This is in the enterprising theme. That's showing a lot of similarity with people in enterprising occupations. And here's conventional, social, and here's conventional. Now compare that with investigative, artistic, and realistic, where the color essentially fades away. Interesting, look at investigative, how little color there is there. Remember, enterprising was her top. Investigative and enterprising are opposite. So usually those two will show up with opposing similarities. So you'll show up very similar with one and dissimilar to the other. And this is something else you can put out on the table and point out to students. If she's saying to me that that she wants to be a chemist, and here's chemist way down here. If she's saying I want to be a chemist and she's got an enterprising social conventional theme code, we're going to talk about the fact that she doesn't have a lot in common with chemists. She can go into that occupation and make a significant contribution, but it's going to be more challenging for her than it would be to go into an occupation that's more consistent with her theme code. Now, using the occupational scales code to answer the where piece of career exploration, she can actually go into the Where Do I Go Next Strong Interpretive booklet and select enterprising, social, and conventional work environment descriptors that appeal to her. Now, these descriptors are based on her occupational scales theme code, and in her case also on her general occupational theme code. If her OS theme code were different, she'd be looking those up to define her work environment. So you could have, for instance, a social person who's similar to people in enterprising work environments and who wants to do helping tasks but wants to do it in an enterprising environment. The strong personal style scales provide additional information about who Sandy is and where she wants to work. Her work style score gives us similar information to her clear preference for extroversion on the MBTI assessment. She wants to work with people. Adding that she would like to work in a team environment where she has the opportunity to be in charge. It's her leadership. And although she's not averse to taking risks, she probably wants a mix of adventure and security. This is important when she's looking for entry-level jobs out of college especially. She also prefers a blended learning environment, one that's a mix of theory and practical application. She might be a good candidate for an internship or co-op program, especially with that ESFP in the back of my mind that's very hands-on and experiential. Now you've just gotten an overview of the strong, just a flash overview across the surface. We go much more deeply into this if you're going to be interpreting the strong for individuals in our certification programs. And if you feel like the strong profile is just, and the accompanying reports are just too much information, there's a new report, the iStartStrong, that might be an alternative for you. Now, the student takes the same strong to generate this report, but this report simplifies the strong scales. The numbers are removed, and you're not integrating a whole bunch of different scales. I'm going to show you how it works. And what's really wonderful about it is that it hyperlinks directly to expanded information on the CPP Career Exploration site and also to ONET. So the student using a PDF of his or her report can just click right to the information. They don't have to do a lot of searching and researching. I'm going to demonstrate it here. Notice this is the iStartStrong report. Remember that enterprising was her top theme. Now we've put all the scores aside. What we know here is that her top themes are enterprising and social. And there's a link here that says learn more that links directly to the CPP Career Exploration website that tells you more about enterprising. Now, every theme on the iStartStrong report is linked here. The student can find out more if they want to or not, depending on how much information they want. And when you move to the basic interest scales, remember that human resources and training was one of her highest and something that she was really interested in. She can click on the HR basic interest scale and go directly to ONET, find out all about related areas of study, career fields, occupations related to this basic interest scale, and various activities for trying out the basic interest scale. Now, this information is from the CPP site. We can also click on the specific occupations. I've clicked on Human Resources Managers. It takes you right to ONET, to HR Managers, and look at all this information. You've got the work tasks, the tools and technology related to do the job. I don't expect you to read all this. Knowledge is required to do the job. Skills required. Abilities and work activities done on the job. Work content. The ONET job zone, which is a whole separate thing. The education required, interest, there's the ESC. Work styles, I like to relate the work styles back to type to it because they almost always overlap. Work values, more related occupations, national wages, and remember before when we were looking, I believe it was at the MBTI, I said you can find state information as well. So if I click on California, that's where I am, I can activate, it goes right to the one-stop center for California. Here we get the profile of human resources managers in California. And I mentioned the video. I have no idea whether I can play the video and have it happen. Down here, again, comparing U.S. wages with California wages. I just have to try it. I'm going to click on the video and see if I can bring it up. I don't know if this is going to work. Bear with me. I'm hoping that you can see that a little screen just opened up. It's loading the video onto my desktop.
Human resource managers are in the business of making positive connections.
Can you see that? I don't know if you can hear it.
Judy, you might want to turn it up a little bit.
Is it a little bit? Okay. Okay, so at least you can see how it's done. So the student can go from a job title on the iStartStrong report to a link to ONET, to national information, to state information, to videos, all the way through. Kind of cool. And a lot of students really like to do that. I've used this several times now in community college classrooms, in hot classrooms, where I'm standing in front and demonstrating it, and they have all their reports on their monitors, and they're clicking through and they're talking, and I put them in triads and they talk about it with each other. I really love the activity and the interaction that's going on around it. And then the teacher of the career exploration class assigns them usually a brief assignment where they come back and present one of their top occupations at the next class meeting. So students can really learn about a lot of occupations that are outside of their own reports. Okay, that's pretty much the strong. And what we want to tell you is that we've got some upcoming webinars that expand on what we've been talking about today. In February, we're doing one on combining the STRONG and the MBTI results in career counseling. And that's where we look at results that fit together and overlap or don't overlap. And then in April, some exciting stuff is happening. A new revision of the STRONG is coming out with revised occupational scales. All of the new STRONG reports, the profiles and the interpretive report, are going to be hyperlinked like the one that I just showed you for iStartStrong. So the whole suite of STRONG products is going to be hyperlinked to ONET and to the CPP career exploration sites. And we'll be able, we're projecting, I think, a March or April release for those new STRONG occupational scales. The appearance of the profile and the interpretation of the STRONG profile is going to be exactly the same, but the occupations are expanded to 130. They're updated. They're more current. That's what CPP does. It's all about renorming these occupations. The next webinar that we're doing is on November 17th, and we're going to be talking about results that aren't as straightforward to interpret as the one we've looked at today. And we'd like to specifically talk about some of your challenging STRONG and MBTI results during the November webinar. And what we'd like you to do is submit PDFs of STRONG and MBTI results that you found particularly puzzling. And if you can just send a PDF to the email that's here and say, I'd like to discuss this, or include your question in your email about a challenging interpretation issue. If you can get those in by November 1st, which is just a couple of weeks away, I'll go through them and pull out of them the ones that we can actually highlight. Of course, we'll do this anonymously, but I'd like some of your examples to talk about, so we're addressing specifically what you're interested in, so we can make that November webinar more interactive all the way through. And I'll pick some that are kind of the specific issues that seem to come up more and more often, and then we'll have your questions come in during the webinar itself as well. If you send an email to cpp_workshops@cpp.com and just put in the subject line November Webinar Challenge Submission, we're going to go through them and pick the ones we use, and if you're selected, CPP is going to send you a special prize. And if it's one of my booklets, I might even autograph it. Karen, never know. It could sell for a lot of money someday.
That sounds great.
When I die. If you're interested in learning more about the assessments, I want to remind you that certification for the MBTI is available through CPP, the American Management Association, and the Center for Applications of Psychological Type, and it's available online through GS Consultants. The GS program, which is the program that I facilitate, is specifically for educators and career counselors. And GS also offers a STRONG certification program in Lake Tahoe in June. That program is already getting applications. It always fills up shortly after Christmas. So if you're thinking about Lake Tahoe, California in June, by all means get in touch with us as soon as you can. These are the references that I've used to just pick out specific words and phrases that I used for addressing the who, why, what, where questions for the MBTI and the STRONG. These are the basic resources, but there are a lot of others out there. And like CPP does every month with these webinars, they're extending a 10% off purchase to any of the print resources. Now, the 10% discount isn't for Skills 1, it isn't for international purchases, but for some of the references that we've used for this program or other books that you might be purchasing from them. The promotion code is EXPERT1011, and that's good until November 4th. If you'd like to try out the assessments yourself, if you haven't taken a STRONG or an MBTI yet, the cpp.com/test drive website will let you do that. I have a blog at gsconsultantsblog.wordpress.com where I talk about interpretation issues. There's also a LinkedIn discussion group, by the way, for the STRONG. It's the Certified STRONG Practitioners group. Really an interesting LinkedIn discussion forum, and people have been they participated a lot in that. I've been really impressed with the kinds of questions that are coming in and the dialogue that you have with each other, which is so much broader than what I can provide. If you're doing these webinars for continuing education, we want you to go to cpp.com/AAE certificate. Each webinar is 1.5 contact hours, and that link will ask you to complete the form, and then you'll receive the certificate. Now, Jim and John have been, I'm sorry, I forgot to put this one up. International customers, you want to go to cpp.com/global sales for information on products and services in your specific geographic areas. Jim and Jack have been listening, probably writing down anything I said wrong about products. If any of you have any specific questions that are related to products, I've asked them to be available to answer them, because I don't keep prices and things like that in my head, and they're answering those kinds of questions every day. And we've got some time left, which is what I wanted. So Karen, if people have submitted questions or if they're doing it now, are there some that you'd like me to talk about?
Yes, actually we have several questions. So I'll start with Anne. She's telling us, my students really tend to get stuck on the occupations listed in your top occupations. Any ideas for how to encourage them to pay more attention to the themes rather than the titles?
Take the page out. I'm sorry, I do it. I don't give them that page until we've talked about themes and we've talked about basic interests. What we do, there's an exercise that we do that's called job design. Excuse me, I have to clear my throat, and I'm going to mute while I do it.
Great. Okay. Another
there's an activity. Excuse. Wait, Karen. I'm sorry. Let me. I had to clear my throat in the middle of a sentence. I apologize. Okay. Am I in now?
Yes.
Okay. There's an activity that we do with the top occupations called job design. We do it with the interpretive report. We actually cover up the job titles, so they don't see the job titles. They just look at the work tasks, and that you can do that. Just cover up the job titles and look at the descriptions of the work. You're right. They're going to get stuck on those job titles, and we just have to keep reinforcing that we're looking for threads, we're looking for themes, and these are just sample job titles to start the exploration. That's all they are.
Okay, so thank you, Judy. The next one is from MT. What suggestions do you have about using the Strong and MBTI and working with adult non-college students, job seekers, looking to change careers?
I think we just did a webinar on that.
Yep.
That was our webinar last month, wasn't it? Or no, yes. I'm sorry. I guess it was last month. Yeah. And just a couple of things. With adults, getting their type right is certainly important, but adults are usually experiencing the integration of their less preferred functions, and so that has to be taken into consideration when you're doing career counseling with them. And the other piece is, with adults, you want the interpretive report for the Strong. Either that or you're going to do a lot of work on ONET, because you want to be looking at work tasks and work environment descriptors way beyond the job titles themselves. And Karen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Karen, I'm going to mute for just a second. I'm not going away. I just really do need to clear my throat.
Okay.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Hear you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the next one is from Cynthia. The OS codes based on respondents do not necessarily correspond to ONET codes based on tasks. For example, attorney. It can be confusing to students to see a different code show up on ONET when using job titles. What code do you advise using first for college students?
Somebody's been through the certification program, because yeah, we address that. You're absolutely right. The Strong is a personality inventory, and so the code comes from the personalities of the workers. The ONET codes are based on the tasks, and so the codes come from the work that is done. The overlap is about 72% between the two. Work environment, the match between person and work environment is more powerful in terms of work satisfaction than the connection between a person and task. And so I'll go with the personality code first, which is the code from the Strong. By the way, if any of you loyal SDS users out there, the self-directed search, they code according to tasks. So it's the same potential mismatch between the assessments.
Okay, so another one is from Kathy. She's asking, what if one strong assessment has no high scores?
Well, first of all, one of the key points about iStartStrong is that with the iStartStrong report, it deals with the highest scores, even if none of them are high. It's not unusual on a regular strong profile not to have a high score. What you want are differentiated scores. So a lot of adults, for instance, will have their top 2 will be moderate and then everything else will fall away. That's perfectly okay. But what is challenging is when everything is at the same level. That's when you have to go a little bit deeper and find out who the person is. Remember, way back in the beginning I said for the who, why, what, where questions, you have to go after the who are you and why is life, why is work important to you first. If those questions are addressed, then scales will differentiate on the MBTI and the Strong. So it's not that there isn't any high, it's when there isn't anything differentiated that there's a problem with the Strong.
Okay, we have another here from Mariana. Sandy's MBTI indicated that she wouldn't be a good candidate for a 4-year degree. The Strong HR manager role looked like she would need that. How would you handle this, Judy?
Well, again, I want to emphasize that the job titles and educational levels that we're dealing with the MBTI have to do with self-selection ratios. It's how frequently are ESFP types found in higher education? How frequently are they found in professional level careers? And the answer is very infrequently. They're not. That doesn't mean that they're never found there. It means that it's less than typical. The fact that she is in higher education, that she is pursuing a college degree, and is interested in careers that require a college degree, the first thing we want to do is keep her engaged in college. So ESFP, it's going to be hands-on, it's going to be personal. So internships, mentors, peer support groups, anything that's going to keep her actively involved in the college environment, the college campus. Secondly, teaching environments and professors and learning experiences that are hands-on and not theoretical and intellectual. So if we can keep her, if we can motivate her through college, then she's going to be one of those ESFPs that does go into HR or one of the other professional occupations. Then we go back and look at the work tasks that ESFPs enjoy from the MBTI and make sure that she's creating a work environment for herself where she can do things that energize ESFPs. ESFPs have dominant sensing, but it's dominant extroverted sensing. And what that suggests that if they go into HR, doing the kind of work, doing compensation analysis, for instance, or something like that, or in insurance and benefits, that would be horrible because she extroverts sensing. She doesn't want to introvert it and look at accuracy. She wants to extrovert it and experience everything around her. So if we can get her through college and she's still excited about HR, there are lots of positions in HR that extrovert sensing with feeling. And one of them is training and development, for instance. What a great backup she'd be for most of the ENFP training and development people. I hope I addressed that okay. It's such a huge question for SP types on the MBTI because they just don't usually stick through college. And that's something we have to work on, is how to get them to stick through college.
We have a few questions that have come in a few more for the iStartStrong report. This one is from Anne. With the iStartStrong report, will the counselor have access to the profiles even if the student does not?
I'm wondering, Jim, I can answer that, but I'd love to hear Jim or Jack. Jim Jack?
Yes, they will have access to it, but it would constitute a new report, and so they would have to pay for that profile at the regular price.
So let me see if let me just walk through it and see if I can understand it. That student would take the regular Strong, and the profile, the iStartStrong profile, could be downloaded either to them or to the counselor?
I would think the student would probably take the iStartStrong.
Okay, but it's the same.
It's the same questionnaire.
Same Strong. Okay, same Strong, but it's called iStartStrong and Skills 1.
But in order for them to see that iStartStrong profile at the end, they have to take the iStartStrong, and then they'll be able to see that result. And if the counselor then wants to also generate an interpretive report or just a profile, they can do that based on that result, but they would have to pay for that additional report.
Okay, so an extra ching-ching at the end. Okay, that clarifies something for me, because a student on Skills 1, the counselor can give the student instructions to take either the Strong or the iStartStrong, right. And you can generate all reports from both of those links. But if you want something to download directly to the student, you have to have them click on the iStartStrong link when they're taking it.
That's right.
Okay.
And I also think part of the question was whether or not the student would see the results of the Strong College Profile after they take the iStartStrong.
Okay.
And that would just be up to the counselor.
Up to the counselor.
That's just handled through the Skills 1 site.
Yeah.
So the counselor could generate the report and then decide whether or not they wanted to share those results with the student.
Yeah.
But like
good.
There's that extra charge for the second report.
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't using Skills 1, who aren't doing the online scoring, if we're talking about it and it sounds complicated, it's complicated for about 30 seconds. Once you get it, it's just wonderful to have the student in your office and be working through an MBTI Career Report. They verify a different type, and you just click and get a report for their verified type, and it's right there. And once you learn how to do it, it's certainly simpler than a lot of the other programs we have to use to manage our lives these days. It's as easy as an iPhone. Okay. Other questions, Karen?
Yes, thanks everyone. And I also wanted to make note for everyone in the audience, we do have a lot of questions on the iStartStrong. So if you'd like to visit our website, we have a webpage dedicated for that. It's cpp.com/iStartStrong. And we have the sample reports there. We also have a frequently asked question document in there. So that might help to answer a few additional questions as well. So let's see, the next question is actually from Roberta, and it's regarding the Sandy's report. So on Sandy's report on the GOT section, the standard score for one theme was higher than the one that it followed, and the higher score said little interest, while the lower score said moderate interest. My statistical understanding has faded so that I don't remember the explanation to that seeming paradox. Folks often get stuck on that. How can I best explain that?
Well, and what I'm going to do, I need the visual for this, and so hold tight because I'm going to go get the visual. I'm going to try and get it back up there again. And I can't remember. I'm looking for the slide number for the GOTS. Here it is. It was a good try, but it didn't work. There it is. Okay. Wouldn't you know, I'd pick a profile with that little problem. Okay, what's going on here is that her score on investigative is 42, but it says moderate. Her score on artistic is 43, and it says little. And now this is a test for everybody that's in the webinar, that's in the online certification program right now. Can you answer that question? Because it's on all the quizzes. Okay. This standard score over here compares Sandy with men and women in general. It's a combined male and female sample. And then this score is interpreted against women to produce moderate. And then this score for artistic is compared against women to produce little. And what this suggests is that women in general tend to score higher on artistic. And so it takes a higher score on artistic to be considered moderate. And women in general score lower on investigative, so it takes a lower score to be considered moderate. So just, I mean, the bottom line is the numbers compare you to men and women. The words compare you just with your gender. How's that? Did we get it?
That sounds good.
Okay.
Let's see.
I'm glad that came up because that's a key question to the strong.
Thank you. And Roberta, feel free to send us if you have a follow-up question to that. Let's see, another question is from Tim. He's asking, what conclusion can be drawn from the item response percentages where there is a stark contrast between like and dislike in two different areas? Example, 74% dislike/strong dislike for occupations versus 78% like/strong like for people.
I think that all I can say here, because we're not doing a full training on the strong, is that the individual categories in the item response percentages are not to be considered separately. It's the total line, the total percentages line, that is considered for interpreting the instrument. And the two that you brought up, you said people, and what was the other one, Karen? What was the first one?
Occupations.
Okay, so it's, and the percentage for likes of occupations was what?
74%.
So 74% occupations like?
So the example was 74% dislike, strong dislike for occupations versus 78% like, strong like for people.
Okay, so what they're doing is saying dislike to all the job titles and like to all the people. That's exactly what I say to students, by the way. If I see that, and it's appropriate to talk. Sometimes it's appropriate to talk about the response percentage, and sometimes it isn't. I'll say something like, you really screened out most of the job titles on the strong, but you're saying you really like to work with people, almost all kinds of people. How does that play out for you? And what kinds of occupations are you thinking about? And let's talk about the kind of people that you'd be working with in those occupations. You can go there, but really that section of the strong is only to be interpreted in terms of the total percentages to determine if the profile is valid to interpret in the first place. So you're going to a much deeper level of interpretation than career practitioners usually go to, and actually the manual advises against that. So one of Holland, the theorist behind RIASEC, one of Holland's constructs is that it takes more than one assessment to get a RIASEC type, and a RIASEC code, an accurate RIASEC code. Multiple assessments are required. What the strong does is it builds 3 different assessments into one instrument, and that's why you have GOTS, BISs, and OSSEs. And they're constructed, they're actually constructed separately, so you have 3 assessments that all merge together. And so breaking that item response chart apart isn't always a place you want to go. Good question, though. I could, offline, I'd be happy to discuss that if the person wants to go farther with it.
Great, thanks. There are a couple of questions regarding the Holland codes. Do you mind if I just ask you both at the same time? They seem fairly similar.
Okay, I'll take notes.
Okay. So let's see. How are the Holland codes and ONET for job descriptions determined? They can be different at times from the strong. And okay. The other, let's see here. Actually, no. The other one is asking, can Judy re-explain what the strong provides Holland code-wise?
Okay, ONET codes occupations based on the tasks that are done. So professionals, labor market analysts look at job descriptions and code the tasks in the job descriptions. The strong codes come from the people who do the jobs. So workers are tested and their personalities are coded according to how they answer the questions on the strong, and those are the codes you get on the strong. So on the strong we have personalities, and in the O-Net we have work tasks, and the overlap is considerable. Now, what the strong provides is general occupational theme codes, which is overall personality, basic interest scale codes, which are specific interests, and then occupational codes, which are the personalities of workers in the job. I hope that covered it.
I think so. Thank you. Let's see, we have several questions. Okay, so I have another one. I believe this is from when we previously stopped for questions, but I can't see if I pronounced your name correctly. Shahia? I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but
okay.
It's asking, do you feel that using these reports may suggest careers that are not growing in today's economy? Most students want careers where they can get a career quickly when they are done with school. What do you do?
Where they can get a what quickly?
A career. So most students want careers where they can get a career quickly when they are done with school.
Yeah, I guess I'm not, for some reason the question isn't registering with me. Any help from Jim and Jack? Help. The occupations for the strong and the MBTI are just gateways. I mean, they're just meant to start the discussion.
Yeah, it sounds like that's what she's referring to. Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
yeah.
You know, I have to tell you, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to norm occupations to get them on the strong. And you know, I have discussions all the time about, oh, I don't have $10 to spend to get a strong. Why aren't the occupations hot occupations? Well, we have to. What they do is they norm occupations that don't change all the time, because you can't. If we normed occupations and had hot new occupations on it every 6 months, we'd be paying $100 a profile instead of 10. And so what the researchers do instead, very wisely, is pick 130 occupations that represent the entire labor market, and they don't change every year. That's the point of them. And so then they can go in and just update a few. And then we have all these other resources that we use, like O-Net, that put the that keep updating. O-Net updates monthly. So we can use the gateway occupations from the strong and go to what's hot and changing right away. That's what's great about the internet. Well, one of the things that's great about the internet. Besides looking at Jack and Jim's pictures here.
Great. And actually they did a little follow-up here, and she actually meant to say job, not career. So
yeah, I agree with her that there's a millennial mindset that expects things to happen right now, and I'm with her on that. And the job search, working with students on the job search and connecting them with employers, everything's happening much faster, much quicker, and of course all the social networking and everything, Karen, that you have expertise in is contributing to that. And one thing that's happening is that students even liberal arts students, are looking at what they're going to be able to do the day after graduation when they're freshmen and sophomores now. So much earlier in college, they're considering next steps. And internships are going to be critical. I think those of you who are working with co-op and internship and community service programs, that's got to be, if you don't have that, you're starting out behind, because everybody has it. Let's do one more, Karen, then we should probably wrap down.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so our last one comes from Connie. What is the easiest way to explain the standard scores to students in the occupational scales? Students always want to think these are percentages.
Oh, I know. All of the scores. These are standard scores on the strong. And so just keep in mind that 80 is as high as you can go on any score on the strong. And I usually tell students that 80 is the top limit, 20 is the bottom limit. Any score that's 40 or higher on the occupational scales means that you have something in common with the workers. So 40 is the cutoff. Anything less than 40, you don't have enough similarity with people in that occupation to really consider yourself similar to that person. That doesn't mean you can't do it. I mean, those of you who know me know I'm an INTJ, investigative enterprising counselor, so nothing fits, and you just find your niche. Of course, it took me 55 years to find it, but I found my niche. That's a joke. That's an NT joke. Karen, you're not even laughing.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jim.
I had myself muted.
Okay. Okay. That's probably a good place to wind up. I guess any person can, any type can do any job. Any code can do any job. You just have to have the internal motivation to find the niche and to make the niche happen for yourself. That's what's tricky, is that counselors don't provide the answers. All we can do is provide the resources and the information and guide the person to search for the answers.
Great.
How's that for an ending on the sermon?
Sounds great. Thank you. So everyone, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your busy day to attend and for asking so many excellent questions. I'd also like to thank Judy for sharing her knowledge and expertise with us today. So thank you so much, Judy.
Karen, can we highlight that November 1 deadline for getting in interesting profiles to discuss at the next one, challenging profiles?
Yes. Yes, please. So everyone send in. The next webinar will be November 17th. So if you can please get those questions into us by November 1st, that'd be great. So today's webinar is part of an ongoing series featuring Judy as our expert. And like we just mentioned, the next webinar is November 17th, and the topic is Interpreting Challenging, Strong, and MBTI Results. To register, please visit our website at cpp.com/askanexpert. And also I'd like to mention that you can view our other on-demand webinars there as well, and we will be posting this webinar in the next couple of weeks. So you can find it on our website. We hope you'll be able to join us then, and thank you all for attending today, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.